Welcome into Steelers Talk. I'm your host, Jack Sperry, and today we got a bunch of great Steelers news and rumors to cover here on a Monday. First up, we're going to be talking about some huge injury news before the playoffs here for this matchup between the Steelers and Ravens. That's really going to affect this matchup in a major way. Also, Tyreek Hill says that he wants out of the Miami Dolphins organization. Should the Steelers go pursue him via trade this offseason? I'll give you guys my answer in the middle of today's show, and then make sure you guys stick around because we're going to be busting some myths that are currently being put out there on Steelers Twitter and other places on quarterback Russell Wilson and why I still think he is the right quarterback here to potentially even upset the Baltimore Ravens here on Saturday. But before we get into the content today, make sure you give me a follow on X if you haven't already. I actually put out my full all 22 film breakdowns of Russell Wilson's game versus the Cincinnati Bengals in Week 18. So if you want to see where Russ struggled, you want to see where maybe it was the receiver's fault for not catching the football. If you want to learn a little bit more about football, you guys can find me on X at Jack_Sperry for my weekly film updates. Then also you guys can follow us on IG here at Steelers Talk at Steelers CS for a daily blast of Steelers news content. Okay, so let's get into the injury update here, where the Steelers will play, or this is actually I'm just confirming here, that the Steelers will play the Ravens on Saturday at 8 p.m. We did not talk about it on yesterday's video, so I wanted to make sure everybody is aware. It is going to be 8 o'clock on Saturday, and it is going to be on Amazon Prime, all right? So Amazon Prime Video gets their first playoff game ever, and man, the Baltimore Ravens versus the Pittsburgh Steelers is one hell of a game to kick off your tenure in the NFL playoffs. But we're going to be going live as well for this game, guys. We're going to be going live at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Wild Card Saturday there, so make sure you guys click that subscribe button, make sure you turn on your notifications, and join us at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time for 90 minutes of pregame coverage. Okay, now let's get into the injury update here, where Zay Flowers, the number one receiver there in Baltimore this season, he was a Pro Bowler. He injured his knee last week versus the Cleveland Browns. He's got a little bit of a sprain in his knee. Now, it's considered minor, but it is considered to be an uphill battle for him to play versus the Pittsburgh Steelers here during Wild Card Weekend. And, besides Rashad Bateman and outside of Zay Flowers, there are just not many wide receivers here with the Baltimore Ravens that they can really utilize, that they can really trust. They do have Zay Flowers. They do have Rashad Bateman. Those two guys are pretty darn good. But outside of that, Steven Sims Jr., Nelson Aguilar, Tylan Wallace. I mean, Wallace can move, don't get me wrong. But, this is a group that it doesn't have great depth, and without Zay Flowers out there, their true number one guy and their best route runner, I think that the Steelers secondary has a pretty decent chance of containing that wide receiver group. And I would definitely expect the Baltimore Ravens to play a lot of heavy packages, all right? I would expect to see Patrick Ricard out there for most of this football game, their big fullback. I would expect to see at least two tight ends out there pretty much the entire game. Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely are both great players. I would expect both of those guys to be on the field almost at all times, and they're going to try to really run the ball down the Steelers' throat with Derrick Henry, and the Steelers better bring a good amount of size and a lot of physicality if they want to get the win on Saturday night. So what say you guys? Let me know down there in the comments section. What's the Steelers' chances of winning against the Ravens on Saturday if Zay Flowers can't give it a go? Put it on a scale of 0, meaning they cannot win no matter what, to 100, meaning they're definitely going to beat the Ravens. Is it somewhere in the middle? Let me know down there in the comments section for today's pinned comment. YouTube's going to throw you an ad break here in just a couple of seconds. And when that happens, take advantage of that time by putting it on a scale of 0 to 100. So now let's move over to Tyreek Hill here, man. And Reek said in his post-game kind of media scrum after their loss to the New York Jets in Week 18 to finish their season that he is likely going to demand a trade out of the Miami Dolphins organization this offseason. This is what Reek had to say after the game. "I'm opening the door. I'm out, bro. It was great playing here, but at the end of the day, I got to do what's best for my career. I'm too much of a competitor to just be out there." And, I think that this is going to become the new kind of trade wide receiver agenda for Steelers fans. Of course, it was Brandon Ayuk, then it was Devontae Adams, then it was Cooper Kupp, and now I think it's going to be Tyreek Hill to kick off the 2025 NFL offseason. And, I can see why. Reek is an awesome player, man. He's been one of the best receivers of the last decade in the National Football League. Might be the fastest player in NFL history. Now, he is getting up there in age a little bit. He's 30 years old, and he's definitely not old or anything like that, but he's definitely getting up there. He's on the other side of 30 now. He's not the biggest receiver, just 5'10", 191 pounds. Still has 2 years left on his current contract, and a lot of that is in guarantees and in restructures and, in the signing bonus. So the Dolphins are really on the hook for a lot of that money. still on his contract, got a couple void years on there as well. So the Dolphins are really locked into a lot of that money. And then, he has been one of the most productive receivers in the National Football League over the last several seasons, and he stays relatively healthy. He plays through injuries. He was very tough. You guys can see before this year, he was consistently getting over 1,000 yards receiving, and over, the 2023-2022 stretch with Tua when he was fully healthy there, I mean, he was putting up ridiculous numbers, man. He almost approached 2,000 yards in a single season back there in 2023 before he got a little bit of an injury, which halted his progress there. But he is a phenomenal talent. He's a great deep threat, all these different things. He's a great route runner, too. He's very underrated in that regard. He's probably one of the best, if not the best receiver with the ball in his hands in open space anywhere in the game today. Now, when it comes to the Dolphins, all right, in terms of what they would do to trade him, they really have no incentive to trade him before June 1st. And the reason why that is because all of his money is guaranteed if you trade him before June 1st this year. That's $28.2 million that they owe him next season if they trade him. All right, so that's against their cap, and it gives them really nothing of value to trade him pre-June 1st. So if you're going to get him before the draft or something like that, you're going to have to send them an absolute haul to make it worth the Dolphins' while to pay that pre-June 1st number. But if they trade him after June 1st, all right, they can save a little bit of that money, about $16 million of that money, I think 15.5 right there, and they only have to take on $12.7 million in dead cap if they wait past June 1st. Now, this is what I think a potential trade idea could look like. So the Steelers could potentially wait to go and get Tyreek Hill post June 1st. They can offer their first-round pick in 2026, all right, so that's 2 drafts from now because obviously past June 1st, I mean, that's past the NFL draft in 2025, so you have to give him the 2026 first-rounder, and then you can give him either Calvin Austin III or Roman Wilson, either one of them, all right? I'm not saying both. I'm saying either Calvin Austin III or Roman Wilson. Give him a receiver to replace Tyreek Hill and give him a first-rounder in 2026. I think that would be the asking price for Miami. And then, you look at the money figures here, what it would cost the Steelers. The base salaries in 2025 for Reek, it's only $10 million. It's really not that much if the Steelers end up acquiring him. Now, there's some roster bonuses in there, all these different things that it won't be $10 million. It'll be more than that, but his base salary is at that $10 million mark. And then 2026, it does go up to about $30 million, but they could potentially restructure and keep him in Pittsburgh before that final season and really lock him up for the next 2-3 seasons and make that cap hit go down further than $30 million. Now, here's the issue about the Steelers potentially trading for Tyreek Hill. All right, I just don't know if they want to put all their eggs in the basket of waiting to trade for Tyreek Hill because, if you end up doing that like you did with Brandon Ayuk last year and you don't really, address the receiver position in the draft or in free agency and you're just kind of banking on Tyreek Hill being traded to you, I mean, if you miss on that, you're out of luck, all right? You miss out on a big-time receiver and you wasted opportunities in free agency and in the draft to be able to address that position, all right? And that's what happened with Brandon Ayuk, and I would worry, especially with so many teams potentially being in on Tyreek Hill, if the Steelers would once again miss out on that opportunity. Now, the way that I would want to go get Tyreek Hill is if GP doesn't want to be here anymore, all right? GP is on an expiring contract next year. Let's just face it, guys, George is probably going to want to get paid, all right? He's the type of player that might say, pay me, trade me, or I'm sitting. All right, and I really don't put it past George to do anything at this point. I could see him sitting out training camp next year. I could see him demanding a trade out of Pittsburgh. And if that's the case and Tyreek Hill is still available on the open market, that's when I would potentially go out and make a trade for Tyreek Hill. But personally, I would rather address this position as early as possible, free agency, in the draft, and I'm not putting all my eggs in the Tyreek Hill basket. But let me know down there in the comments section, would you accept this trade? Would you trade a first-round pick in 2026 and Calvin Austin III or Roman Wilson in exchange for Tyreek Hill? Type A for accept or type D for decline. In just a second here, I'm going to tell you about our sponsor today at Fume. And while I'm talking about Fume, go down there in the comments section and give me an A or a D. Now let's have a word from our sponsor here at Fume. And have you ever caught yourself reaching for a bad habit? Maybe it's that moment when you're with friends and you just want to feel like you fit in. Well, that's where Fume comes in. It's not about quitting. It's about finding a better alternative. Fume, the sponsor of today's video, has created an innovative flavored air device that's perfect for those moments when you want to break away from bad habits and still have something enjoyable to reach for. Fume is an award-winning flavored ice device that draws flavor to your mouth, not your lungs. It's a great way to satisfy your oral fixation with non-toxic flavors, free from nicotine or vapor, and it's safe to use anywhere. Fume's design is also about more than just flavor. It's an awesome fidget tool with magnets and clicks that help calm anxiety. You'll love how Fume feels. It has premium quality, sleek design, and it's perfect for taking with you on the go. Physiology shows stopping a bad habit of cold turkey is very hard on your brain. Fume works by replacing your hand-to-mouth fixation, calming nerves tension through fidgeting, and distracting you from your bad habit with delicious flavor. Fume is also backed by doctors in the U.S. and continuously invests in third-party studies to ensure the safety of their products. Fume has already helped over 300,000 people build better habits. Try Fume today. If you order the Journey Pack now using my code ChatSports, you'll get a free Fume topper, an awesome accessory to level up your experience. Go to tryfume.com/chatsports or scan the QR code on the screen right now. A big thanks to Fume for sponsoring today's edition of Steelers Talk. So now let's bust a couple myths here, guys, because I've been seeing a lot of stuff being thrown out there on Steelers Twitter, and I understand the frustration. The Steelers have lost 4 straight games. The offense has struggled ever since that huge explosion against the Cincinnati Bengals when they scored 44 points back in Week 13. Since then, they haven't nearly been as good. But I think that there's been a lot of stuff being put out there on Russell Wilson that just isn't true. The first myth here is that he was awful in Week 18 versus the Cincinnati Bengals. All right, I've seen people say that Russ was the only one to blame for that loss against the Cincinnati Bengals and that the offensive struggles were 100% on the quarterback and that he needs to be benched immediately. All right, well, I think that the drops in the second half were pretty significant, guys. You take a look at his accuracy metrics. He only had a 54.8 completion percentage, but you look at his catchable ball percentage, the passes that he was putting on target, it was 82.1%, which is pretty darn good, all right? So you have those 4 drops in the second half. You had that deep ball to George Pickens, which would have put you at the Cincinnati 25. That would have been the difference in the game. You had the drop with Pat Freiermuth on 4th and 12. Russ had some really nice downfield shots that were dropped on Saturday, and without those, or if he had those and his guys actually caught the ball for him, I think that we'd be looking at Russell Wilson's game a little bit differently right now. You take a look at the stats here from Week 18, a 67.7 adjusted completion percentage, so that is accounting for drops. The adjusted yards would have been at 215 on the day. Then the adjusted yards per attempt would have been at 6.9, and he would have had 1 touchdown to 0 turnover-worthy plays. That's a pretty darn good stat line for somebody that only passed the ball 8 times in the first half, all right? So he was completely limited. It was a run-heavy approach to start the game. Only had 12 pass attempts in the first 3 quarters when this team was scoring 7 points. And then when they actually went to him in the fourth quarter, the offense completely changed, guys. They scored 10 points, and they were Pat Freiermuth drop away from attempting a 13-point fourth quarter there to get the win on 19 total pass attempts. So we had 7 more pass attempts in the fourth quarter alone than in the first 3 quarters combined. So I think if you're blaming, the first 3 quarter offensive collapse solely on Russ, I just think that, you're not really looking at the numbers there. You take a look here at some of the numbers in the fourth quarter for Russell Wilson. He was 12 of 9, which is a 63.1% completion percentage. Certainly not bad, but remember, 3 of those incompletions ended up being drops. He had 112 total yards, which was 58% of the yardage for the entire game. All right, that's over half of the yards the Steelers had the entire game on Russ's back in the fourth quarter with a 2-possession deficit, and the defense knew he had to throw the football. Also, in the fourth quarter, he had the most first downs than in any other quarter with 6. And then if you adjust for the drops here, he would have had a 78.9% completion percentage if those 3 drops end up being caught. He would have had 148 total yards in the fourth quarter. He would have had a yards per attempt of 7 with 7 first downs. All right, so the reality of the situation, whether you want to believe it or not, what the film and the stats are telling us here is that the Russ-led, shotgun-heavy, pass-heavy offense that the Steelers ran in the fourth quarter was way more successful than the run-heavy approach that they were doing in the first 3 quarters. All right, we've seen it in the past as well with that Week 13 performance from Russell Wilson where he had over 410 passing yards, and then he put up 44 points in a pass-heavy offense. This is what the Steelers need to do to be successful with this team. Second myth that I'm going to bust for you guys right now. Russ only throws deep balls and checkdowns, all right? And a lot of people think, he's either throwing the moon ball or he's checking it down into the flat. This is just not true by the numbers, guys. You can take a look here. Intermediate versus deep. He only has 3 more deep balls than he has intermediate passes this year. The attempt percentage is pretty much the same. The catchable ball percentage is much higher on the intermediate balls than it is for the deep balls, but that's because deep passes are lower percentage throws generally. Then the yards per attempt is still very, very good. By the way, Russell Wilson is number 1 in the league in yards per attempt on intermediate passes this year, and then the EPA per attempt is actually higher when he's throwing to the intermediate part of the field than the deep part of the field. So you take a look where he ranks in intermediate throws this year. What's the narrative on Russell Wilson? He can't throw to the intermediate part of the field. Well, he's second in completion percentage when he throws there. He's 6th in catchable ball percentage when he throws in this area. And he's 1st in yards per attempt. So he's super efficient and super accurate when he's throwing to the 10 to 19 air yards level of the field. And, what's funny about this narrative is that even the Ravens defensive coordinator, Zach Orr, has bought into this narrative in here. And he has fallen for this narrative that many people have about Russell Wilson, that he can't layer that football into the intermediate parts of the field. And that's why the Pittsburgh Steelers need to attack the Baltimore Ravens in the intermediate this week. All right, what did Zach Orr say on Hard Knocks? All right, this is a guy that shoots 3-pointers or layups. All right, nothing in between. So Russ is just going to show him that he can shoot that mid-range too, and he can take those big chunks time and time again to Muth, to George Pickens. Arthur Smith needs to know that, and that's the area of the field that they need to attack. The third myth that I'm going to debunk for you guys right here is that Fields has been the better quarterback than Russell Wilson this year. Now, Josh Roundtree is a media member in Pittsburgh here. He's a Justin Fields supporter. He wants him. I believe he wants the Steelers to start Russell Wilson. He says Justin Fields finished with a higher completion percentage, QBR, and winning percentage than Russell Wilson in the regular season. And, some people accuse me of cherry-picking stats on this show when it comes to the Russell Wilson-Justin Fields debate, but I noticed that Josh left out quite a few relevant statistics here when it comes to that comparison between Justin Fields and Russell Wilson. He kind of cherry-picked the ones that definitely favor Fields. So you take a look at the stuff that Russ has been better at this year. He's got more points per game, more passing yards per game, more total yards per game. So the people that say, the rushing production from Fields, Russ still has more total yards per game when you include the rushing. Yards per attempt is much higher. Passing or passer rating is higher. Big time throw percentage is higher. Turnover-worthy play percentage is higher, so he takes care of the football better. Third down conversion generally and on 3rd and long. Better for Russell Wilson this year, and his passing EPA is better than Justin Fields this year, according to Sports Info Solutions. You look at the downfield passing stats as well. So you take away the Deacon and Duncan, all right? You take away the checkdowns. You take away the short completions. How do these guys stack up? Well, Russell Wilson clearly has the better numbers when he's throwing 10 or more air yards down the field. Justin Fields only completed 6 passes of 20 air yards or more this season. And Russell Wilson, as we've talked about, has been very efficient throwing the ball down the field. This year, the catchable ball percentage is much higher, the yards per attempt is much higher, and the EPA per attempt downfield passing is almost double what Justin Fields had in his 6 games as the starter of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Then you look at the general offensive stats. When Russell Wilson has been there and in there, and Justin Fields has been in there, the offense has still gotten almost a field goal more per game. They've gotten over 30 more yards per game total. The yards per play has been higher with Russell Wilson on there. And then also the big time throw percentage and the turnover-worthy play percentage, according to Pro Football Focus, are both significantly better, over a point difference in each of those. So Russell Wilson has been the better quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers this year, despite the recent struggles, and he is the guy the Steelers need to go with in this playoff game against the Baltimore Ravens. He may not be the guy to bring you a Super Bowl, but I think he's the best that the Steelers got, guys. So who's the better player? Let me know down there in the comment section. Type RW for Russell Wilson. Type JF for Justin Fields. I hope both of these guys are back with the Pittsburgh Steelers next year. And by the way, Steelers need to use Justin Fields more in the short running game than they have. But Russell Wilson is the right guy in my opinion. Let me know yours down there in the comments. So now Arthur Smith is getting head coach interview request around the National Football League. He will be most likely interviewing with the New York Jets and the Chicago Bears. They have requested permission to speak with Art from the Pittsburgh Steelers. And, the way that I'm feeling about this, guys, is please take him off our hands, man. I would love for him to go somewhere else and be a head coach so that the Steelers can hire somebody that can maybe tailor his offense a little bit more to the strengths of the roster, maybe go more run and shoot, maybe go get a guy like Byron Leftwich who runs a similar type of offense that Big Ben ran here in the Super Bowl year here in Pittsburgh when Tomlin was still here. There's other options out there. There's Shanahan, McVay style offenses I would prefer to Arthur Smith's kind of bland, predictable, ground and pound style of offense. It just doesn't fit the skill set of the players here with the Pittsburgh Steelers offense. But unfortunately, I think he's back in 2025. The offense has been improved from last season, and because they took that positive step forward, and I don't think the team wants to, go on another offensive coordinator search, I think that, if Arthur Smith doesn't get a head coaching job, I do believe he'll be back in 2025, and that's really unfortunate because I think that this Steelers team could really benefit from somebody else calling the plays. Now, before I say goodbye here, guys, make sure you click that subscribe button, and I want to give another special shout out here to our friends at Fume. Thank you so much to Fume for sponsoring today's video. Scan the QR code and use code CHATSPORTS, it's one word, all caps, CHATSPORTS, to get your free Fume topper when you order your Journey Pack today.